Earlier in the conversation, you mentioned developers always kind of being on the forefront of pushing rents, product, whatever the case is. And then you also mentioned you getting involved in apartments. So personally, I feel like in submarkets, it's submarket specific, but in some markets across the country, Class A apartments seem to be overbuilt or on the verge of being overbuilt. Do you have an opinion on the apartment market in general at this time?
You know, Raj, if you'd asked me that question 2 years ago, I'd tell you that, yes, we're on the verge of being overbuilt, but they keep building them, they keep leasing them faster than I would imagine anything was possible. Now, you know, if I look back at some of the market studies that I've read, it predicted this demand would be there. But I just blew off the market study as just whatever they needed to do to get their bank loan, right? And maybe they were right about that. I'm pretty surprised. You know, I wasn't in the apartment business, but I watched it a little bit. I would say from the 90s to the 2000s and even into the early 2000 teens, you didn't see any rent growth in the apartment market in St. Louis. The rent was pretty much the same through that whole period. And now in the last 3 or 4 years, you're seeing real rent growth. And vacancy has not gone up because of it. I'm not sure I know what's going on. So I would be hesitant to say it's going to be overbuilt because I thought that already happened, and guess where we are? Now, maybe you're seeing something different over here on the Illinois side. I don't track that. But on the Missouri side, it's shocking how many units are getting leased up.
So surprisingly, and I shared this with someone else as well, CoStar had a report like 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. The Metro East is leading the St. Louis region in rent growth, and occupancy is like 96%. Yeah. So it's strong.
Yeah, I don't know how to answer your question. I mean, I would have thought something would be going on, but it doesn't seem to be happening. So there must be a paradigm shift in the way people want to live.
Sure. And there was a paradigm shift in the office sector.
Right.
You were on the cutting edge of developing office buildings that are attractive to the people working there versus to the companies or employers necessarily. Can you walk through your Edge at West development and your thought process behind it?
Yeah, happy to do that. So this is long before COVID, but it's a little bit of serendipity at the end of the day. I was talking to an office broker, name happens to be Tom Ray, and we were talking about the market. And I've done a lot of office buildings. You know, I don't know how many of my buildings have been office, but quite a few. And we were saying, okay, if we were doing something today, what do we do? And I said, well, what we want to do is we don't want to do an office that maximizes the usable square feet and all those other things. What we want to do is create an environment that will put the tenants in the building in a position to win the war for attracting the best talent imaginable and creating the most productive talent. People have been putting cubicles, all sorts of bad things have been happening to them. So we literally took 30% of this building and made that common element space for the use of the tenants, and at the tenants, but the occupants, the people who actually live in that building every day. And then we went out of our way to make it super user-friendly. And that was our goal going in. We had to get a lot more rent for it. We were charging $10 a square foot more than any of the office space around us. But even during COVID, we managed to get that rent to 90-some-odd% occupied because we were delivering on what we said we would deliver on. And the people who moved in were happy to pay it because they realized it was not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things, but they were getting better employees. Employees wanted to come to work instead of not wanting to come to work. And all these things really benefited them. So I think you'll see more of it. In fact, I'm told there's probably a dozen buildings around town that are being retrofitted to basically copy this because they want to retain the tenants that they have. And guess what? The actual company that leases space from you, they don't have to think about it. It's already there for them. They can focus on their core business and not have to think about how they make their employees happy.
When you mentioned some of the amenity space, what did that look like? What were some of the amenities you put in there to benefit the occupants?
So all kinds of things. There's areas for socializing and gameplay, you know, shuffleboard, outdoor putting greens, bocce ball court, a half-court basketball thing, so some of that kind of stuff. Then we had lots of little escape rooms. We had big living rooms everywhere, but little escape rooms. We had a bunch of phone booths. They didn't have phones in them because you already got to them, but they were soundproof, so you could have privacy to go have a private phone conversation. Lots of little breakout rooms so people could do that. fitness center, a big multi-purpose room that would get sometimes used for yoga classes, sometimes used for other stuff. It could then all of a sudden bump out, and now the tenant could have a 60-person meeting down there if they wanted to. So it was a space where they didn't have to have a big, giant conference room for big things. They could come down. We had a coffee bar with a live person in it, so you could go get a cup of coffee, do those kinds of things. And then just generally made it super comfortable, feel-good space to be in. You know, it just, when you walked in, you had this sense of, God, it's really nice to be here. Let's figure out. And then I just have a thing like front doors, automatic. You shouldn't be touching a door to get in and out there. Bathroom doors, you don't want to handle. You push in, you push out. You know, little things that just make it more user-friendly. And then when COVID came along, guess what? I'd already touched a bunch of the buttons already. And so, you know, almost virtually all touch-free services. We already had plasma filters in our HVAC system that killed microbials, not just MERV filters for dirt and particulate matter. So it was pretty good.
That's amazing. So you were early in industrial and clearly on the cutting edge of office. What would your thoughts be on the next cycle or the next decade? What do you think will be a big trend or some of the big trends in commercial real estate?
I've been thinking about that, and I'm not sure I can tell you just yet where I'm concluding, but here's the thing I will say needs to be in your thinking. We live and have for some time in the experience economy. And so whatever you do has to be based on the experiential impact to whoever it is. And I don't care whether it's office space or industrial space or whatever, there has to be something that engages you as part of the experience to want to be part of whatever that is. You know, we did little things like 9 Mile Garden and now Frankie Martin Garden. I don't know if you've heard of those places, but, you know, they were ways to take part of what was otherwise a traditional development and do something that was more user-friendly, right? They really weren't money makers. They're probably never going to be money makers, but they're a lot of fun and people enjoy it. And it's that kind of thing. I don't have a project I'm going to kick off tomorrow, but those are the kinds of things I'm thinking about.
Our maintenance manager, he actually lives close to 9 Mile.
Oh, does he?
And he goes there every weekend. So for him, I think it's become almost like a third place, if you will, which I think we're lacking as a society. You know, just that third place aside from work and home, where people can connect with others. I think that'll be a big trend in commercial real estate, whether it's coffee shops, town squares, things along those lines. Do you have any idea of what may become of the mall sites that are either currently being shopped or will be shopped in the next decade? Like, you have a lot of indoor malls that have failed or will fail. Some of them are becoming high-end mixed-use developments, some industrial parks. Do you think the majority are going to go one way or the other, or any opinion there, just location-specific perhaps?
Well, of course, you know, you've heard location. Just location can affect everything, of course. And the demographics around you will always drive what you're able to do and not do. That's why you can have really robust retail and dead retail all the other places, right? There's some places where the internet's never going to take over the full retail experience because of the ability to spend money and the desire to have the tactile experience of doing that. I don't know how to really answer that question. What do you think?
So I think it's location specific. I think if you're in a high-end suburb like Chesterfield, for example, mixed use is the way to go. And then I think if you're in, let's say, an outlying area, a small town, a place that really had no business having an indoor mall in the first place, probably industrial park or part industrial, part smaller retail, something along those lines. I think that's probably the natural evolution of some of these sites.
You know, a few years ago, I got presented with Jamestown Mall, as everybody has done a million times, and my recommendation was scrape it and put industrial in, and maybe you could put a little bit of retail around the perimeter that was possibly supported by the community, but, you know, there's just not enough people living up there. I think that's finally what they're going to do. You know, a lot of that stuff is going to get scraped off, and specifically the functionally obsolete. But the you know, Chesterfield Mall, I agree with you, would be a great mixed-use development someday if you can get control of it right. Mall ownership's very strange. You know, typically all the big stores are owned by those stores, and then the operator of the mall owns the mall. So not anybody owns everything. So it's hard to figure out how to pull all that together sometimes.